just kind of big picture thinking, why is this so important? Why is it important to get hazmat training? And probably the most important reason is it's required by law. You have to do it, right? It's required per the regulations. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of move through the slideshow, but if you don't get trained, you can get penalized for it, right? And if you ever were to get a visit from an inspector from the DOT, I'm telling you right now, pretty much the first thing that they're going to ask for is training records. They always ask for proof of training. It's not like, maybe they'll ask for me. No, they're always going to ask for proof of training. And that's because when things go wrong with hazmat shipments, it usually is related to employees not actually getting properly trained. They make mistakes because they weren't actually trained. So this is really like the #1 compliance issue when it comes to the DOT hazmat regs, is just making sure that employees are properly trained. So they'll always ask for proof of training. If you haven't been trained, you'll notice they do have a minimum fine. This is not a maximum. You'll at least get a $617 per employee per day violation. Now that is per employee. So just using a simple example, let's say I had 10 employees and they were supposed to get trained, and maybe it was just one day I didn't train them for, well, that's a multiplier of 10. So you take that 617, you multiply it by 10. We're talking at least a $6,000 fine as a starting point, because again, we can always go up from there. So you really do want to make sure that you are properly training your employees, because it can lead to violations. But from the grand scheme of things, the reason why training is so important is it helps us to do our jobs correctly, right? Because there's very easy to make mistakes if we don't get properly trained. For instance, maybe an employee offers some undeclared hazmat. That really just means the material is hazardous, but I didn't know it was hazardous, so I shipped that out as non-hazmat. Well, they hate it when you do that type of thing. That almost always leads to a penalty and stuff like that. So obviously, training is important so we can know what's hazardous, what's not. It's also important for things like classifying the material, right? If I haven't been trained, I might call my material a flammable liquid when it's actually corrosive. And obviously that's going to have negative impacts for people that are in the later chain of command and cyclotransportation. I also might use unapproved packaging. For instance, if I haven't been properly trained and I want to ship my hazmat in a fireboard box over here, and I just grab it, not realizing I needed to have what we call a 4G box. If you don't know what a 4G box is, it's just a box that's met certain testing standards, where they did things like dropped it, and some boxes have to meet rigorous testing standards. And if I haven't been properly trained, well, I might not know that, right? I might use the wrong kind of packaging, which makes it unsafe for transport. I could also select the wrong marks and labels to go on the package. Like for instance, on the screen there, you can see it says acetone. It's got a flammable liquid label. If I didn't know about those markings, I wouldn't have known how to apply those. And then also things like shipping papers, emergency response info. You get the point, right? If I'm not properly trained, I may make some mistakes. If you do make a mistake, it can lead to violations. I already talked about the training violation. For anything else related to hazmat shipments, if you are getting what's called a civil penalties just means kind of like accidental penalties, where a good example of this would be like, let's say my drum is supposed to have a hazard label on it and I forgot to put it on there. Whoops. Wasn't intentional, doesn't matter, you didn't do it, right? So they would say that's a civil penalty. And if you ever do get a civil penalty, you'll notice they have a maximum violation of $102,340 per violation per day. Now, that is the max number. Most people wouldn't get a $100,000 fine. That's just what they can't go past. But regardless, we don't want to get these fines, right? And not only just related to fines, just related to your carriers, right? So if I don't prepare my shipment correctly, that can lead to my carrier, like FedEx and UPS, rejecting the shipment or stopping it. So even if the DOT is not penalizing me, I'm still getting penalized because now my shipment's delayed. That's going to cost me time and money. And as I've been kind of alluding to, lack of training is really often the factor in these violations, right? Because if you haven't been trained, you're often not going to do these things correctly.